We're so glad that you're here and we can interview you. And we know your time is valuable, so we really appreciate you being here. Before we start, we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Izzy.
I'm Julia.
And I'm Cassidy.
And so we're really excited to highlight you as an architect of change and also your accomplishments as a senior in high school having this nonprofit.
And so, as we've said before, our club embodies the motto, challenge what is, imagine what can be, and move humanity forward. So, would you mind introducing yourself and your business before we begin to help our community get to know you?
Of course. So, hi, my name is Emily Chang, and I'm a senior in high school. I attend a school in Santa Clarita, which is around the Los Angeles area near Six Flags, California. Stella and Luna is my 501c3 nonprofit that I kickstarted in my sophomore year of high school. I kind of gave it a rebranding and reassessed some of my values and what I wanted to do with the company in my junior year, which is when it really started to take off. But pretty much Stella and Luna sells handmade hair accessories and jewelry, and 100% of the profits go to two shelters that I have partnered with in Los Angeles. So the People Concern and the 1736 Family Crisis Center. And then I also, on the side, I host free jewelry making classes at a local single mother shelter in my town. Currently, we're doing it virtually with mailing out kits and virtual instruction, but that's another thing that this company does. And it's been one of the biggest time commitments throughout my high school experience, but also one of the most rewarding ones. And honestly, I probably couldn't imagine going throughout high school without having this business to work on the side and having something that I'm genuinely passionate about to focus my energy on. I think I've always known that I was very interested in both fashion and business as a child. I was always at my sewing machine, drawing in sketchbooks, and I also was very interested in business. I think by the time I was 12, I did bookmarks and I tried to do skincare and photography, and they all flopped, but it was just really fun for me. And I think entering upon high school and engaging a little bit more with my community through different honor societies, I really found community service to be kind of the missing piece of the puzzle to really put the three together and find a way to positively impact my community through that. And as far as why domestic violence and those shelters in particular, I stumbled upon a PSA for domestic violence actually. So PSAs actually are very impactful and effective. And in that, she disguised her call to 911 as, I think it was a pizza order, so that her abuser in the room didn't hear her. And I think at that moment, I kind of realized that domestic violence is a very unseen issue, in part because it happens within homes, and also because there's a lot of stigma and shame and doubt that's associated with being a survivor of domestic abuse. So for me, I knew I wanted to find an avenue through which I could empower that group of people, predominantly women and children, statistically speaking, and a lot of them at that. I think the statistic is every 20 minutes in the United States, someone is abused by an intimate partner, and that's equates to millions of people each year, millions of people that we don't necessarily get to see on a daily basis because we all kind of have our demons that we deal with, and I know for these people it's extremely difficult to talk about it. So my goal was to find a avenue that I was very passionate about, which for me was fashion and business, and use it to empower this group of individuals. And I stumbled upon the two shelters that I ended up forming partnerships with just through research. I knew that my area of Los Angeles, it's an issue that is very very major, I guess, in the area that I live. And so I wanted to keep it local, and I wanted to partner with shelters that I could really connect with. And so just researching and calling the the executives at those shelters really allowed me to settle upon two that I was really passionate about working with. And they've been such great supporters throughout this entire thing, and they're always sending me letters and emailing me and communicating, and that relationship also has been really special to me. And I know from experience, running a business is not easy, but also it has a lot of significance behind it too, personally as well. So I kind of wanted to dive further into the name behind Stella and Luna, what the meaning was for you at least. Yeah, so there is a verse in the Bible, I believe it's Psalm 147, verse 3 through 5, and it mentions God's just like imminent power. And I don't mean to like get too like spiritual, but in association with like the stars and the moons, and Stella and Luna is translated in, I think, Spanish or Latin to star and moon. And I was like, oh, I just thought the name was cute. And there was like an emotional connection between the two. And also from like a branding perspective, like owning a business, you have to kind of be cognizant of like the name that you choose and like the traction that you'll have with a given audience. And I just thought that all those things fit in really well with one another. And I felt like not only did it make sense from like a marketing perspective, but also like with my own connection to the issue, and like my reasoning behind why I want to pursue this thing, and it all just kind of worked out really well. So like I mentioned, I started it in my sophomore year, and I think as a sophomore I was very timid and I was very afraid of kind of people noticing, I guess, the things that I was trying to do, because I think especially in high school, there's a lot of judgment associated with, whatever things that kids try to pursue, especially at like my public school. There's like a lot of judgment and competitiveness. And so I was very timid with pursuing it. But then I think one day I sat down with my mom and I was like, what I'm doing right now, which was just making scrunchies and donating them to the shelters, I was like, I feel like I'm not doing enough. And I said, like, I know I could be doing more. And I kind of just made the choice then and there to be like, it's going to be like awkward and it's going to be uncomfortable, but you should just go for it, because only when you adopt that mindset can you actually like make positive change. And then after kind of that shift happened in the transition to my junior year, it was like full steam ahead, pursuing all the different like red tape that you have to go through with like the IRS to like get 501c3 status. That was scary. I like don't like dealing with like taxes and the government. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but my mom's a lawyer, so she kind of like guided me through it a little bit, which was helpful. And when I started to open up to it, about it to my friends, they were so supportive, and I was honestly so like blessed that I had a friend group who was like, oh yeah, like I'll buy things from you and I'll follow you on Instagram. And so having that support group, in addition to the support of my parents, which was something I was really afraid of, I was afraid that they would say, oh, like you're in over your head, it's not going to go anywhere. And my parents actually sat me down and they're like, unless you have like a business plan and a way to like make up the money that you're spending initially, like it's not going to go anywhere, because there's a lot of competition in like the accessories and jewelry business side of things. And I think having that tough love in conjunction with a support group from my friends really helped me feel empowered to pursue this whole entire like organization. Yeah, so everything is handmade by me, so it's a lot of time commitment, like I mentioned earlier. As far as like the setup and the organization, there are services that allow you to file with the IRS through them. So they're kind of like an agent that helps you do that. It does cost money, which was why I was hesitant at first, but I was able to like make everything back and like make a profit from it, obviously. So that was kind of a gamble in the beginning, is having enough faith in whether or not this could actually go somewhere to be like a sound investment. And then also with like selling online, when I was younger, I was like, oh, like you can just like sell it and like ship it over and there's no big deal. But there is like complications with like having a seller's permit in the state of California. So I had to do that through the Secretary of State, I think. And every year, like with having a nonprofit, you have to file your 990N. So I had to also like keep track of all the different things that I had to be responsible for. And so before I went diving deeper into launching this or growing this organization, I spent like I think a week just like doing research every single day and making sure I had all my ducks in a row. I'm a very like type A personality, so I don't like just like jumping into things and figuring it out as I go. So I made it a point to do my due diligence, I guess, and I kind of wanted to prove to my parents that I knew what I was getting into. So yeah, it was just a lot of research about not only the nonprofit responsibilities, but being a seller in California and all those responsibilities as well.
Can I ask if any of the pieces that you make have any special significance, whether that's to you or to the name?
I kind of named the pieces just because based off of like the charms that were on them. So for example, this one, it's the cherub one, and it just says like what an angel, because it has cherubs on it, obviously. But I think the names, even if they might not necessarily like have an emotional connection with me, I know that they reach a lot of my customers. I've had people like message me about this necklace in particular, and she said my twin sister like passed away a few years ago, and my mom always said like whenever you see two angels, like that means like she's like with you. And so when she ordered this necklace, she added a comment under her order, and like that kind of hit me really hard. I was like, these are real people with like real emotional connections behind the things that they're buying, which yeah, meant a lot. So I think I name it, I kind of have fun with the names. And I choose charms and designs that I just think are like pretty to look at. But I know that even if it's not necessarily rooted in like a deeper meaning for me, that it does with other people, and that means a lot. I think so. I'm also on like my school's debate team and my school's newspaper. And junior year, kind of everything came to a like climax, and it was a lot of stress. And then also junior year, like I said, it was when I started to more heavily pursue the business side of my organization, and it was really slow at first. And I think there were a lot of nights when I would stay up trying to like strategize more with marketing and getting the name out there, in addition to like AP and honors classes, and then also like debate in the school newspaper. And when I had those responsibilities on top of not seeing a lot of growth with my business, it was like, is it even worth it at all? And I would get really discouraged about whether or not it was worth pursuing this as something um, like for the long term. Um, but I think I always try to maintain like a this too shall pass attitude. So whenever I'm having nights where I'm staying up really late and I'm not getting sleep, or I'm really like overwhelmed and discouraged, I just tell myself like this will pass, and tomorrow like you'll start again. His mercies are new each day, and you can just pursue it with full zeal and zest the next morning. And I think that just kind of not giving up when you're feeling down, which is so cliche and it's easy to say, but I truly believe that when you're in moments of like high strung like emotions and stress, don't make any like big decisions in those moments, and kind of wait it out till you're at a time when you can reassess it a little bit better. So when I was overwhelmed with schoolwork or debate or this business, I kind of just gave myself a break until the next day when I could look at it from a more objective perspective, which it's like easy, like I said, it's easy to say that. But when you're actually in the moment, I understand like it's so difficult to juggle everything. But yeah, I think just maintaining that attitude really helped throughout junior year, especially. That's a great question. Hindsight is definitely 2020. I think I wish I would have been more confident in like my abilities, I guess, going into it. I think I was, like I said, I was very timid in growing my business. I was like, what if this gains traction and people don't like it? I was afraid of like criticism. But I think if I could go back and do it again, I would say starting sophomore year, just go for it. Don't wait for a year of being afraid to do something bigger with it, and just make the jump. And I think that's true for a lot of things just in life in general. We can either like regret not doing things, or like regret not doing them sooner, I guess, like because eventually you either do it or you don't. And I'd rather do something and kind of see what happens rather than like wonder what if. And I know like in my sophomore year, before all of this started taking off, I was like, there's no way anyone really cares. Like the internet is so big, and the world is so big, and there's so many different like avenues through which people can like buy jewelry. So like who really cares about like what I'm trying to offer? But like I said, like just having confidence in your abilities, and ultimately like your why, like why are you doing this? I think if I had believed in that a little bit more when I first started out, then I could have seen even greater growth than like what I did today.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like having that growth mindset, especially when you're first starting to like really just like get the confidence to keep going. Cause in the end, your nonprofit has made such a big impact, like that you didn't even realize in the beginning. And now, like with COVID times, how have you been like adapting to that, or how has COVID affected your business?
I think when the like shutdowns across California first happened, like across the world really, it was a little bit of a negative impact on my business, because obviously like things were changing with the economy, and there's a lot of stress going on, and I kind of understood that like maybe now is not the best time to like try and convince people to buy jewelry. But I just kind of kept at it and remembered my why. And then once things started to like transition a little bit more, I had a lot of free time actually during quarantine. Um, so I was able to more aggressively pursue growing my business, and I'm actually not only grateful for the opportunity, but I'm glad that I guess I had an opportunity to capitalize on the extra time. So I think it was actually beneficial in terms of like my overall journey and growing my business. And because it's like an online like e-commerce situation, there wasn't very many things that were different. The only thing was I had to do like the jewelry classes virtually. So I couldn't go in and like actually instruct a class. I had to make like kits and film a video and then ship that out to all the people who go to the single mother shelter. But other than that, I'm like actually pretty grateful because I think it worked out for the better in terms of like in comparison to how other like small business owners and other extracurriculars were affected by the pandemic. I think that as women, like in today's world, I think we face a lot of doubt just in general about our capabilities. And I think for me, having like a fashion merchandising business kind of made me feel, and like just my general interest and like love for like fashion and clothing and things like that always kind of made me feel, I guess, like weak in comparison to like all the male dominated like STEM classes that I was taking throughout high school. And then having that on the side, I was like, oh, like I can't do both, I guess, like be interested in STEM and take these classes and then also like love clothing. And I think a lot of the people in those classes, not like explicitly, but just like our interactions kind of made me feel like I didn't belong there. And I think that's true in general for girls in life. We're going to feel like we don't belong in certain places. But I think that in general, just knowing like what you bring to the table as an individual and the skills that you bring, like none of the outward judgment or like the external opinions really matter. And like I said, that's I always say things that are like cliche, but it's because they're true. And so I think for all like other young women and young girls who are wanting to start a business or wanting to do something entrepreneurial, it's a very like male dominated space, and I think there will be a lot of doubt in terms of people's capabilities. But I think as long as you are rooted in a very strong sense of self and you know what you bring to the table, and then you kind of come to a point where you realize that if you know your worth, like nobody else's opinions can really change that. And so just kind of maintaining that mentality is really important.
I love how you support the passion and the confidence behind everything that we do, or whoever wants to be an entrepreneur chooses to be. But so going from that, we just had a mass for over 40 girls at our school who performed 100 hours or more in service. And so we wanted to talk to you a little bit about that because you tied it into the shelters and the domestic violence. But how would you navigate telling the girls at our school to wield their passions into the services?
I think, be like I mentioned, I was very passionate about business when I was younger. And I think growing up, that passion kind of turned into like cynicism a little bit, seeing like all the disparities between people that kind of was exacerbated because of like big businesses and things like that. And I think that when we are passionate about something and we pursue it only because we're passionate about it, it's almost like you're living for yourself. And I think when we're on this earth, we kind of have some sort of like moral responsibility to channel the things that we're passionate about and not do them just to live for ourselves, but to positively impact others. And I think for some, it might be like challenging to like find a tie-in between things that you're passionate about and helping the community. But I would say like be creative with it, and really kind of challenge the status quo, almost like challenge like what you currently can do with those things that you're passionate about and try and find other ways to connect that to improve the community. And I think that honestly is like one of the best ways to go about doing community service, because if you're genuinely passionate about it, then the impact and yeah, like the uplifting of others will naturally follow.
You know, it's a busy world out there and there's a lot of things going on, but I think hearing someone else like similar to our age kind of speak about these things really brings it home. But focusing on you for the last sector of our conversation, as a change maker, you are moving humanity forward, but where do you envision yourself in the next year? Because I know college applications are getting ready to be due soon, so prayers for that. But also your business and how that'll carry forward into college. So as you're a senior in high school, what are your next stages and next steps for your life?
Yeah, I definitely still want to pursue social entrepreneurship in my next stage in my education. So I think my first application, I'm like applying early to a school and it's due in like 10 days. And the major that I'm hoping to major in kind of connects public policy with like ethics and philosophy as well as business. So my hope in the future is whatever college I end up going to is finding a way to combine the different things that kind of go into social entrepreneurship. Social entrepreneurship is very like interdisciplinary. You need to have a good grasp of like public policy and government, as well as like the business aspect, as well as like I mentioned, like the ethical considerations that kind of come into play. So yeah, regardless of where I end up going, fingers crossed that I end up going like where I want to go. I will definitely study something that ties in all three things. And as far as like continuing my business, it's definitely something that I want to continue. I think especially in high school, we kind of have this mindset of do an activity, put it on your resume, and then when you go to college, like it'll be done. But I like made it a point when I was going into it to make something that would be sustainable past high school and into college. So like I guess like in the way that I function right now, I have like a small area like in my house, like in my hallway, just a desk where I keep all my supplies. And I did that on purpose because I wanted to get used to kind of having a tight area and like not a lot of room to function this business with. So that way when I go to college, it's easy to transition it into a dorm room. So I've tried to be very intentional with the way that I plan on scaling this past high school and into college. And then also like in the things that I study, I hope that all those things kind of come together nicely so that yeah, I can continue pursuing this field that I'm really passionate about.
You really embody our motto wholeheartedly. I mean, in and out, by not only challenging the limits of COVID-19 with your business, by reaching out and helping to even donate jewelry to frontline workers, as we learned before, but you're also imagining a better future for Americans facing domestic violence, as you donate and help charities like 1236 Family Crisis Center and such. But also, finally, you are moving humanity forward on a path, being more aware of our surroundings, people struggling with massive issues behind the scenes, and giving hope to Americans in tough times through meaningful and intricate jewelry. So we cannot thank you enough for your time today that you spent with us, conversing about yourself and how inspirational you are. And like Miss Bent said, we really hope to have you on our campus when COVID is all behind us and we have better dates ahead.